So, director Owen Laux here. This is for Miss Worley. So, the scene starts with Bernard casually explaining the orgy in a calm manner in his confessional, which represents how far the society has fallen and how they cannot understand how ridiculous a community orgy is to build connections with your friends. Bernard's confessional, where he states that he feels alone and unconnected, and him looking around awkwardly and not speaking while the others chat and smile in the beginning of the orgy-porgy scene, illuminates how he feels alienated from society. How Bernard looks uncomfortable and doesn't relate to this group of people, yet they still indeed have their orgy, shows how false and forced this society's sense of connectedness is. The camera slowly panning around the group, highlighting them taking their soma before the ritual, represents how the people in this society must resort to drugs to have a good time, instead of truly having good fun. When the orgy-porgy group holds hands, they form an upside-down star, which is kind of like a satanic symbol, which represents how Christianity is completely absent in this society. And their hand-holding also represents how close and connected the people in this society should be to each other according to the government. The camera angle being high up above the orgy group instead of low to the ground or at their level represents how only the elites and the high-class people in the society like alphas and betas take part in the ritual rather than the low-class deltas and epsilons. The camera specifically zooming in on the mouths of the characters while they say orgy, porgy, Ford, and fun. Kiss the girls and make them one. Boys at one with girls at peace. Orgy, porgy gives release. Highlights how important the ritual is to the characters and the importance of propaganda like these rituals is in this society. And we chose to have the characters perform a conga line while saying their quote, or not their quote, orgy, porgy, to once again demonstrate how the people in this society want to be very connected with each other. Director Owen Laux, 1 of 6, signing out.
Hi, my name is Emerson Painter. I'm the co-director and editor for Brave New World. In our adaptation of the novel, we chose to recreate the Philly scene with John and Lenina because we thought it demonstrated the effect that integrating into a new society had on John. Additionally, it highlighted the idea that John's purpose in the novel is to compare his experiences in a savage reservation to the high-tech society in London. In Brave New World, the Feelies serve as an outlet to experience emotion. The experience is completely controlled by the world's rulers, accentuating the theme of control and totalitarianism. In this scene, John is appalled by the Feelie. He describes it as ignoble, especially due to the promiscuous sex scene, which the Feelie concludes with. John's reaction is in response to his perspective on gratuitous sex, which he finds to be immoral. We made sure that John seemed disoriented and confused in order to emphasize his unfamiliarity with society, and in contrast, Lenina seemed to be enjoying her experience. When he expresses his opinion on the Feelie, Lenina is confused and does not understand why he would feel this way. We see this and we're able to understand this through the confessionals at the end of the scene, as well as the interaction between Lenina and John. This is due to her consistent conditioning, which has taught her that polygamous sex is normal. Ultimately, in this scene, John gets an introduction into the new world, which he perceives to be immoral and superficial.
This scene highlights the clash between two different worldviews. The wild landscape symbolizes freedom and authenticity, which John values deeply, while Lenina represents the controlled, pleasure-focused world state. Their conversation shows Lenina's genuine but naive belief that happiness is all that matters, while John struggles with his need for something more meaningful and real. This moment captures the core conflict of the entire story, which is the tension between shallow but pleasure and deeper truth, and it reveals the emotional distance growing between them despite their desire to connect.
Director Ellen Troyer here. I would just like to say that this scene truly shows how indifferent society's values are. It begins with just Linda and John together. John is devastated to see the woman who raised him and whom he loves suffering. This shattering moment is then interrupted by curious children with their nurse. They are there to learn about death as a small matter instead of something to fear. They poke the suffering Linda with indifference. This bothers young John because he has not been conditioned like the others. He is the only one in the room that feels a personal connection to someone. Another element that I thought was very important in the scene was the nurse. Typically, nurses are caring and comforting to those who have recently lost someone that they care for. However, since death isn't seen as a big deal in this society, the nurse fails to see the issue in using this dying woman as an example for her young students. According to Brave New World, Huxley writes, should she speak to him? Try to bring him back to a sense of decency? Remind him of where he was? Of what fatal mischief he might do to these poor innocents? Page 206. When John lashes out on the gawking children, she simply remarks that he needs to calm down to preserve their hypnopedia. The nurse doesn't understand the torment John is feeling because she doesn't feel that kind of connection toward anyone, nor do the children. Through the chaos of the scene, Linda remains gasping for air in the center, yet the nurse could not care less. John then reinforces the fact that Linda is his mother when going off on the nurse, which is something that likely shocked her to hear.
Hi, I'm Director Vivian here. I'm explaining the choices behind the scenes from chapters 16 and 17. The opening line begins with Mustafa Mond. He says, I was cooking up some soma of my own. We chose this phrasing because the book uses the expression cooking and leads readers to believe he might have been cooking up drugs or other substances. He was going to be sent to an island for breaking the rules of society and chose the alternative option to get where he is today. The angles that we chose to film in were very selective during the scene. When filming our beautiful actress Ellen Troyer playing Mustafa Mond, we chose to film in a 0.5 zoom and from below to make her look larger than life. It also shows that she controls the narrative in the scene at hand. Continuing into the scene, Bernard was forced to take some soma to stay accurate to the book. But this arrives Helmholtz, the society's golden boy. Or is he? In his confessional, the audience learns that he has deeper feelings about the society. He doesn't fit in. Not because he's not good enough, but because he's too good. The way that Mara Bell, John's gorgeous actress, entered the scene was primarily for comedic relief, but also because the way that Mond called for him was demeaning and showed that he could be controlled. Mond talks to Helmholtz and John about the way he controls society. He and John argue about the narrative that anything beautiful is to be hated. During this argument, we, the audience, see Mond holding the book Divergent. This book was chosen for because it was also a dystopian book where the main character goes against the grain and chooses to live a life outside of society after its dark secrets are revealed. We chose to zoom in from behind the other characters again to show who is controlling the scene. This is also where Mond can be seen holding the Holy Bible while he speaks upon religion. This shows his intelligence and authority. Towards the end of the scene, Mond says that religion is unnecessary because there isn't any pain or suffering in the society. This is proven untrue. Almost all of the characters shown in the books show some sort of pain, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Those that show the most are John, Bernard, and Helmholtz. In the end, we see Helmholtz choose the islands because of his need to create and write, and he believes to do so is to do it from a place of suffering. We begin the transition to the final scene with John, stating he knows the perfect place, this being the lighthouse where he thinks that he can finally be alone and self-sufficient. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mara Bell, and I'm one of the directors, writers, and actors of Brave New World. We chose to recreate the build-up to John's death and his death from Chapter 18 because we thought its contents held many strong themes from the entire novel. Huxley created this book to criticize the post-World War II atmosphere and warn the world about what their society could turn into. For example, when we chose to show John looking out of his lighthouse, the beautiful, vibrant view represents the fact that John was finally free from a society which he didn't fit into and which rejected his beliefs. Then we cut the scene to John having inappropriate and lustful thoughts about Lenina, showing how though he was part of the society for a short amount of time, he began to lose his values and succumb to the traditions of the New World, despite being against the society that Mond created. John is clearly distraught about this and starts whipping himself in an attempt to separate himself from the immoral world. Then the clip of the news anchor covering the fact that John was whipping himself spread the idea that John did this as a savage ritual, reinforcing the idea that this society was extremely biased towards the savages from the reservation. Then we chose the woman in the helicopter to be one woman, then switched to Lenina, then back to the original woman in John's mind to show how society has corrupted John's mind and he attacked this woman because she thought that she was Lenina. The other reporters here represent society's desensitization to the emotions and feelings of others when they chant, "We want the whip," and "orgy porgy" over and over again. We decided to have the man shove the soma down John's throat while John was against the wall to show John's inability to escape the world and how he had no control over himself anymore. Then we made John's soma holiday seem childlike and extra happy to highlight the contrast between the real world and what people experienced within the soma holiday, showing how this civilization used soma so often to blind the citizens from what society was really like. Finally, we got the final image of John's feet dangling to represent the fact that he committed suicide, a final act of control in a world that prevented him from controlling anything of his own. Sorry, I was choppy.